Okay, so welcome to this next video in which we are discussing integrins. Okay, so we now want to see the involvement of integrins in attaching epithelial cells to basement membranes, and to do this we're going to look at the structure of a basement membrane in a little bit more detail. Okay, so basement membranes consist of two layers, basically, two layers of connective tissue separated by a space. Okay, so this first layer, which is the layer on which the endothelial cells are actually sitting, so here is our endothelial cell here, okay, this layer is known as the basal lamina. Okay, so this whole thing is the basal lamina, okay, and there is then another layer which is below the basal lamina, down here with a space between the two, okay, and this is known as the reticular lamina. So this whole thing here is the reticular lamina. Okay, and there's then a space between the basal lamina and the reticular lamina. Okay, now, firstly we'll start off by looking at what the reticular lamina is made up of. We'll then look at what the basal lamina is made up of. We'll look at what connects the two of them. Okay, and then we'll look at how the endothelial cell, or the epithelial cell more generally, attaches to the basement membrane. Okay, so we'll start off with this reticular lamina here. So the reticular lamina consists of collagen fibers, okay, and these are a specific type of collagen fibers. So it specifically consists of collagen type 3, which I will show here in pink. Okay, so all of these fibers are supposed to represent collagen type 3. Okay, collagen 3, and then it's done with Roman numerals usually to be pretentious. Okay, so collagen type 3, you've got a layer of collagen type 3 which is underneath the basal lamina, and this is known as the reticular lamina. Now the basal lamina is usually divided into two layers, okay? So the most apical layer, the layer on which the endothelial cell is actually sitting, so this one here, is known as the lamina lucida, because it's pretty light if you look at it under a microscope. So lucida, think of translucent basically. It doesn't look particularly dark if you look at it down a microscope. Okay, then underneath the lamina lucida you have this other layer, and this is known as the lamina densa. Okay, so lamina, I should have said this earlier actually, lamina just means layer. So this is the layer that's sort of translucent, this is the layer that's very dark if you look at it down a microscope. Okay, and this means that it's the basal layer, it's at the base of the endothelial cells. And reticular means that it resembles a spider's web. So this is the spider's web-like layer. Okay, now, let's start off with what lamina densa consists of. So lamina densa again consists of collagen fibers, and these collagen fibers again are of a specific type, okay, and they are of type 4. So lamina densa consists of type 4 collagen fibers. Okay, so in green here, this is collagen type 4. Okay, so collagen 4, and the Roman numeral for 4 is IV, like that. Okay, now, the lamina lucida doesn't consist of collagen. Instead, it consists of a bunch of proteins known as laminins, which are often drawn like a four-leaf clover shape, okay? So here we go, here are some laminins rather. Okay, and these are going to be very important because, as you can see, this is the layer that's closest to the epithelial cell. So these laminins, as they're called, these are what the integrin in the epithelial cell is actually going to attach to. Okay, so this is the laminins. Okay, right. Now, all we have left to talk about is how do you connect the basal lamina to the reticular lamina. Okay, now you have collagen anchoring fibrils, as they're called, so just collagen fibers which span this gap and connect to both the basal lamina and the reticular lamina. So let me draw some of these on. So we'll have these in blue. Okay, so these are known as collagen anchoring fibrils, and they're specifically collagen of type 7. Okay, so they're known as collagen type 7 anchoring fibrils. So let me write that down. So this is collagen type 7 anchoring fibrils. Okay, and they're connecting these two laminas, the lamina basal, or the basal lamina up here, and the reticular lamina down here. So these are collagen type 7 anchoring fibrils. Okay, now you also have something else that connects these two layers basically, and these are fibrilin microfibrils. So let me just discuss this in a bit more detail. So the protein fibrilin is not a great big strand. Instead, it's a tiny little globular protein like this. So what we do is we polymerize loads of fibrilin proteins together, okay, to make what's known as a fibrilin microfibril. Okay, so fibrilin microfibril. And we're going to have fibrilin microfibrils spanning this space between the basal lamina and the reticular lamina and connecting the two. So here is a fibrilin microfibril. Here is another fibrilin microfibril. What colour shall I colour in the fibrilin microfibrils? I think we'll colour in fibrilin in orange here. Okay, so here is the fibrilin in orange. Right, okay, then that is now the complete structure of our basement membrane. So the entire thing is the basement membrane. From here to here, the entire thing is the basement membrane. Suppose we also need to colour in our laminins here. So let's colour in our laminins in turquoise, these crosses. Okay, now you're going to have integrins in the basolateral membrane of this epithelial cell here, which are going to attach to laminin proteins in the lamina lucida of the lamina basal, or the basal lamina rather. Okay, so let me give you the subunit compositions of these integrins that are going to bind to the laminin. So here, crudely drawn as a box, is an integrin binding to the laminins. But now let's have a look at the actual subunit composition, i.e. which alpha subunits and which beta subunits. And I have 3 examples of integrin proteins which are capable of binding to laminins in the lamina lucida. Okay, so we have, let me just bring this down a little bit. Okay, so we have alpha 3, beta 1. So you pick the alpha 3 alpha subunit and you pick the beta 1 beta subunit. There is also alpha 6 beta 1, so they're all beta 1s, but they vary the alpha subunit. And finally, alpha 7 beta 1. So these 3 integrins are all found in the basolateral membrane of endothelial cells, or epithelial cells to be more general, I'm sorry. This is an epithelial cell, not necessarily an endothelial cell. Endothelial cells are the cells that are specifically lining the lumen of the blood vessels. Epithelial cells can line all sorts of different lumens. Okay, so this is an epithelial cell, and they have these integrins on them, the alpha 3 beta 1, the alpha 6 beta 1, and the alpha 7 beta 1 integrins, which combine laminins in the basement membrane, and this is what attaches the epithelial cells to the basement membrane and keeps them in place. Okay, so the basement membrane is also considered as extracellular matrix. Therefore, this is considered a binding between a cell and the extracellular matrix, and would therefore be considered heterophilic binding.